Hello, I'm Donal McCauley, and welcome to this BMJ Leader Conversation where we talk to the key opinion leaders in health and medicine around the world. Today I'm talking to MaryAnn Ferreux, who has the remarkable title of Chief Medical Officer for Health Innovation. But even more exciting, she's had the most amazing career travelling from the UK to Australia and, quite unusually, coming back again. But let's take you back to the very beginning. Tell us about school and what brought you into medicine in the beginning, MaryAnn.
I was always interested in science at school, and I thought maybe I'd go into biomedical science or pharmacy or something like that. Both my parents were teachers, they're both head teachers. They pretty much told me not to go into education, so that was kind of was put to the side. I actually had a careers conversation with someone at school when I was about 16. And I was telling him what I thought I might want to do in the future. And so I said, it could be any of these things in science. And I sort of said, oh, and maybe medicine. And he said to me, someone like you will never get into medical school. And I remember just being absolutely shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I stormed out of the room and said, I'll show you. And that was it really. So it was I was just on a mission to prove somebody wrong that told me I couldn't do something when I knew I could do it. And although it probably didn't come from this love of I always wanted to be a doctor, I realized whilst I was in medical school, actually it was probably a really good fit for me. My love of science, always loved helping people, speaking to people, that building relationships with patients was something that I always really enjoyed. And so, inadvertently, that careers conversation guided me to where I was supposed to be.
So you went to medical school in Liverpool. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Southeast London and decided to take the furthest university I could away from where I was living, and moved to Liverpool and had a fantastic time there and really enjoyed just the people, the atmosphere. It's a great city. And the medical school was really quite progressive as well and diverse, and I really appreciated that as well. So we were sort of the first year of that sort of problem-based learning, and just being able to learn in quite a different way was really helpful for me. I didn't learn until later in life that actually I've had a form of dyslexia. And so that kind of really didactic learning probably wasn't the best. So those sort of group sessions of problem-based learning really fitted the way in which I learn. I found that a really, helpful education. And then, did my F1 and F2 whilst I was in Liverpool as well. And then decided that I needed to kind of go and see something else and do something else. And at the time, in the sort of early 2000s, it was very much you sort of had to pick your career, your specialty quite early on. And I didn't really want to choose yet because I thought, well, I haven't really tried enough things to know what it is that I want to be yet.
Let me take you back for a moment because you did something quite interesting when you were at medical school. You did an Erasmus in France.
I did.
Tell us about that.
I did actually. That thank you for reminding me of that. So, yes, I'm quite an opportunistic person. So if something just comes across my plate and I look at it and think, "Oh, that looks interesting. I'll give it a go." So, it landed in my email box. There happened to be one space left on this Erasmus program that I'd never even considered before, and decided that on that day that, yeah, I'm going to put my hat in the ring, and left 2 weeks later to go to France and worked over there. Met my husband, so so had a great experience. And just I think working in a different culture, different system, you learn a lot. I don't know if you've ex had much experience about what, treatment in France. I think the actual medicine is very similar, but obviously the clinical pathways and the actual sort of health system and the culture are different. And so it was just a really fantastic experience to have. I remember walking in to the A&E department that I was attached to and just looking around thinking, where are all the patients? It was empty. And I'd come from Liverpool A&E that was just jam-packed all the time and going, "Well, where are all the patients?" And it was, completely different environment to be in. But, really, a really great experience. I'm very lucky to have had it.
So you spoke there about when you qualified and when you did your F1 and F2, and there was this feeling that you had to get stuck in a pathway, but this wasn't for you.
I think that deciding on what specialty you're going to go into. I mean, some people know from, really early on, I'm going to be a surgeon or, I really want to be a GP or something like that. I hadn't given it much thought and I didn't feel that I'd had enough experience. So in F1, F2, you kind of have, 3 or 4 months in a placement. And I'd enjoyed pretty much all of my placements, to be honest. I knew I wasn't going to be a surgeon, but other than that, I kind of had quite an open mind. And so I didn't want to feel pressured into having to choose so early on. And I think the culture was quite different back then. It was quite frowned upon at the time if you didn't choose something, you didn't know what you wanted to be. So I felt quite alone actually in that decision and thought I rather than choose something and get it wrong, I kind of needed to be true to myself and actually just take some time to explore other options. So that's what I did.
So you packed your bags for Australia. Tell us about that experience.
Yes, I think again it was quite random. I remember saying to I'd just gotten married. I remember saying to my husband, I'd love, let's just go away for a year. Let's go and do some traveling. I might do some voluntary work. I said, well, how about we go to Africa? And he wasn't really up for that. And so the other thing that started with A was Australia. And I thought, well, why don't we go to Australia? And he said yes to that. So, yeah, I just literally just found a job online. Was in a place called Newcastle. Thought that sounds familiar. It was quite close to Sydney and just went for it and thought, well, it's for a year. Let's have a different experience. And yeah, so went over there with the expectation of coming back the following year to then choose my specialty and to think about the kind of my future. And yeah, well, one year turned into 13 years. So I was there for a very long time. I had my children there. And yeah, we really loved living there. It was a great experience.
So tell us about those 13 years because you had a very exciting career trajectory, very unusual. Tell us about it.
Yes, so I mean, it was unusual probably in that, again, I've had quite a squiggly career. I didn't really have a lot of planning in it. So I went to Australia without any expectations. What I really appreciated about the structure over there is that it felt like there was more room to breathe. So I felt the UK at the time was very competitive. It was, everyone kind of had to stream into a specialty. And I was a little bit more, open to different opportunities. And Australia really enabled me to do that. So I was able to choose jobs with lots of different rotations in. So, I did another SHO year of lots of different specialties. I then, was a medical registrar. I then decided, oh, I want to learn a bit about psychiatry. So I was a psychiatry registrar. And then I worked in A&E as a registrar. And it was all very normal out there. Like there wasn't any kind of no one tapping me on the shoulder saying, "MaryAnn, you really kind of need to choose where your career is going right now." It was all, "Yeah, that sounds great. Come and join us, in our department." So I found that really liberating, and also I knew early on, and I think a lot of women that I've spoken to since have asked me about this, so I think it's important to talk about it. So when to have children within kind of your career pathway. And I always knew that I wanted to have children and I wanted to prioritize that. So actually being able to sit in these quite flexible roles really enabled me to be able to become a mother. So I think if I had gone into a very sort of a highly competitive specialty, I think it is really challenging for women to be able to think about, well, where can I put, this is a massive thing to go and have kids. So where can this fit in to the current pathway, and being able to get that flexibility to then go part-time and have maternity leave and things like that. But because I was working in A&E at the time, actually it was easy. I could just went and did nights, or I could just have a few days here or there, and found it a really flexible way to have, I had two small boys at the time to be able to do that. And actually, when I was ready to just sort of decide in partnership with my husband, now I think I'm kind of ready to choose what I want to do. My eldest had just started school, things had kind of calmed down, and I felt in a much better mental place and personal place to be able to sort of focus in on what is it that I want to do, where do I think my career is going. And, I was lucky enough to meet a fantastic mentor who I talked to about public health. So I'd started a master's in public health and thought just really interesting. It was something I've always been passionate about, social justice. And so, learning more about public health, I was thinking maybe that's kind of a role for me. And I remember this mentor, who was the medical director at the time, and she was also a professor of public health. She essentially said to me, "No, MaryAnn, there's no jobs in public health. This is clearly before COVID, so there were no jobs in public health." And she said, "I think you'd be really good in medical leadership and management." I was like, "What are you talking about? That doesn't exist. You have to be, an old person to go and be, a medical director." And she said, "No, no, no. There's this new college. It's called RACMA, the Royal Australasian College of Medical Administration." She said, "I've joined it. I think this could be for you. There's a training place that's coming up. Why don't you think about applying for it?" And so that kind of started me on that journey around medical leadership. And I think that I wouldn't have been open to that if, as I said, there's kind of the personal and that professional life have got to be in balance and at the right time for you to really be able to I felt for me personally to be able to pursue, a career, particularly in that space. I mean, all of the specialty training is really challenging, but leadership is, it was a vertical learning experience. I think that in medical school, you learn a little bit about every specialty, but I didn't feel like we did anything about management or leadership in my day. So, or clinical governance, or, understanding how to manage health systems. Like we didn't do any of finance. We definitely didn't do anything of that. So when I joined that program, it was literally a sort of a vertical learning experience, and yeah, a bit of a Wizard of Oz moment, sort of drawing back the curtain and going, "Oh, okay, that's what happens behind the scenes." And yeah, so it was a really interesting time.
Well, you talked about a squiggly career and balancing all the different parts of your life, but along the way, you've collected an enormous number of qualifications.
Yeah, well, yes, I think that because I'd kind of had my children sort of more earlier on in my career, um, I then sort of had this, I don't know, a bit of a kind of a new lease of life, and went, oh, now I need to sort of do something for me and for myself and because I had really supportive people around me both at home and at work, I felt I was in a really productive time in my life, and that's when again, I really didn't say no to a lot of things and new experiences. So, when I felt like I didn't know something, I went, well, what course can I do about that? Because I really think this is important. I think it's going, I really want to know about it. And so it's probably, I look back and think, you really didn't need all those qualifications. But at the time, I felt they were beneficial. I felt that I was just sort of in my learning era, and these are the things that I wanted to do. And so, being within a specialty program like medical leadership management, it's actively encouraged to do in the same way that you see cardiologists going and do a PhD or whatever. So in the same way, it's kind of that academic excellence and that's sort of what I really wanted to do, and I've really enjoyed all of the courses that I've done, um and I guess the other part is kind of feeling connected within the college structure as well. And I know that since sort of coming back to the UK, a lot of younger doctors don't necessarily feel that connected to a medical college, but I've really benefited from, those relationships and also the work that the Royal Colleges do. And, so I've wanted to be part of um, those types of organizations, but also in leading those organizations into sort of the future and particularly around equity, diversity, and inclusion. So really thinking about how we can change what those, institutions that have huge, historical relevance, but also power and influence across the health system, how they look and also who they represent, I think is really important. So I've done a lot of work in that space too.
So after 13 years, 13 wonderful years and exciting years in Australia, you decide to come to the UK again. Tell us about that transition.
Yeah, so I think we'd got to probably year 12 and my husband sort of said to me, what's our decision here? Are we going to stay here permanently or do we want to go back? And he's from big family, and I think he really missed his family. So neither of us are from Australia. That's the thing, I think most people kind of get married to an Australian and then you're sort of connected there. So I think we kind of hit a bit of a crossroads of where do we see our future? And I thought, yeah, actually maybe it is time. My parents are, getting older. His parents are getting older, and I think there was a thinking that we wanted to be there to kind of provide that additional support. So I actually had applied for a job in the UK and been successful, and then COVID hit, and it was. As you know, it was a crazy time. So I was a medical director of an acute hospital, and I knew I couldn't leave anyway, and also I knew that I needed to help lead our organisation through that time. There was so much anxiety. Australia, we knew we were sort of 2 weeks behind the UK, and we saw what was happening in the UK, and it was just devastating. And so there was a huge amount sort of a panic and anxiety and fear, and I very much felt responsibility for looking after kind of our clinical workforce and being able to take them through that period. So ended up staying for another year, and that was very lucky, and that the job was held for me for a year, and then came back over, and it was the second lockdown, and ended up spending the next, the first, what was it, 7 or 8 months of my new job working from home. So again, really strange experience and a strange time. But yeah, it's great to be back. I think there's so many things that I've learned that I try to put into place now whilst I'm here. And being able to sort of understand both systems, I feel has really been of great benefit to the work that I currently do. So, yeah, it's been great.
So let's bring you up to the present and tell us about your current job.
Yes, so I have several jobs. So I am currently the Chief Medical Officer for Health Innovation Kent, Surrey and Sussex. For those that don't know about the Health Innovation Networks, there are 15 of us, 15 organisations across England, funded by the NHS and the Office of Life Sciences, and we test, scale and spread innovation into health and social care. So really enjoy being able to pull in the things that I love to do. So things around program management, clinical transformation, thinking about population health, thinking about digital, get to do stuff around AI, and new technologies and things like that. And linking in with lots of different partners within kind of the industry and academic space and linking them with sort of clinicians on the ground to make sure that whatever it is we're designing and developing meets those needs, those clinical needs. So that's really interesting work. I get to work in the future and to influence and shape what that looks like. And then I have two other roles. So I'm a non-exec director for Kent and Medway Mental Health Trust and Kent Community Health Trust. Um, and I really enjoy that because I live in Herne Bay, I live in Kent, and it feels like I'm really contributing to my own, my own region. So everything I try to do, I try to think of within that kind of health equity lens and how we can pull kind of the physical and mental health needs together in a much closer relationship and better integration and really thinking about what is it that I see the community that I live in, what are their needs and challenges and how can I help to kind of communicate that to decision makers so that we get better health services for them. So I'm very lucky in that role. And then I also am on the council for the Royal College of Physicians in Edinburgh as well. So I was a trustee with them and I chair their EDI committee. And so again, it's kind of something I'm really passionate about inclusion and being able to help them kind of shape their strategy and to really see the changes that have happened across the college is something that, I'm very proud about.
And with all these different roles, as if you weren't busy enough, you haven't quite finished with education and academic work.
So that's my other bit on the side. Yes. So I decided about 3 years ago, and I think it really came from COVID. I think that health inequalities became really stark and apparent during COVID. And although I had actually done quite a lot of research in the past about the impact of the social determinants of health, I went into kind of this space looking at health inequalities and how we can address them. And I just felt like I didn't know enough, that I didn't have enough expertise. I mean, this is just me. I probably did, but I felt for for me to be the leader in that space, I wanted to know more and I was interested in it, and so decided to take on a doctorate. So I'm doing a doctorate with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in public health and policy. And so my research is on, how the NHS can address health inequalities, and particularly for refugee and migrant women around mental health services. So again, just sort of a bit of a labor of love thing, something I feel interested in and wanted to learn more about, and just enjoying the process. And I think it's given the work that I do in leadership that kind of methodological rigor that sometimes isn't always there. And it has, changed my thinking. I get to meet, it's a really international group of students that are from all over the world and to start honing my thinking around global health and how we might sort of look at responsible innovation and AI for the future. It's been a fantastic setting to engage with other people around those ideas. So yeah, I'm very lucky.
So my final question is just going back to what I read, as I suppose your personal mission statement is lead with purpose, leave with a legacy. Tell us about that just to finish off.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, over the years, I think when I first got into leadership and management, about I think it's 10 years, more than 10 years now, um, I just thought that there were a lot of things that needed changing, and I would get the skills and capabilities to be able to enact those changes. I think that's as far as it went, really. I didn't have much other thinking, 11 years ago as to what the why. And it's only sort of within the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I've had some fantastic mentors and coaches where I've really been able to kind of discover what my purpose is in leadership and what is it that I want to see being achieved that kind of goes beyond a job or a role that I might be in. And when I do come to retire, which is not for a very long time, but when I do, what is it that I want to leave behind? What is that legacy of work that I want to see? Thinking about sort of the broader questions has really helped me to kind of stick to a pathway where I feel that everything that I'm doing is adding to that future. But also I feel like it's really helped with kind of burnout. And I think that a lot of leaders do feel burnt out at the moment. I think a lot of workers across the board, within health and social care are feeling quite tired and burnt out. Lots of change happening. It can be quite exhausting. So I think having an eye on that bigger picture stuff, as to what is it that I can do right now and what is it that I think I might be able to do next year and the year after that. I have a much broader sense of, this is what I feel passionate about. These are the skills that I might bring. These are my sort of personal research interests. And, what is the value that I'm going to add to this role that I'm going to do? And what is the impact that I want to see? So it's just asking different questions. So I found it to be helpful. I hope that other people might find that a helpful process as well.
MaryAnn, thank you very much for sharing so much of your life and your career and your aspirations and your philosophy, which are so refreshing. It's been just wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.